Hello and welcome to the session on biological aspects of development. Development begins with conception. Conception occurs when fertilization creates a zygote, an organism formed by the union of a sperm and an egg. All the other cells in our body developed from this single cell. Each of the cells contains enduring messages from our parents carried on the chromosomes that lie within its nucleus. Each chromosome houses many genes, the functional units in hereditary transmission. Genes carry the details of our hereditary blueprints, which are revealed gradually throughout. The prenatal period extends from conception to birth, usually encompassing 9 months of pregnancy. A great deal of important developments occurs before birth. In fact, development during the prenatal period is remarkably rapid. If you were an average sized newborn and your physical growth had continued during the first year of life at a prenatal pace, by your first birthday you would have weighed 200 pounds. In this section, we will examine the usual course of prenatal development and discuss how environmental events can leave their mark on development even before birth exposes the newborn to the outside world. The course of prenatal development. The prenatal period is divided into 3 phases: the germinal stage, that is the first 2 weeks, the embryonic stage 2 weeks to 2 months, and the fetal stage 2 months to birth. Some key developments in these phases are outlined here. Germinal stage. The germinal stage is the first phase of prenatal development, encompassing the first 2 weeks after conception. This brief stage begins when a zygote is created through fertilization. Within 36 hours, rapid cell division begins and a zygote becomes a microscopic mass of multiplying cells. This mass of cells slowly migrates along the mother's fallopian tube to the uterine cavity. On about the 7th day, the cell mass begins to implant itself in the uterine wall. This process takes about a weekend and is far from automatic. Many zygotes are rejected at this point. As many as 1 in 5 pregnancies end with the woman never being aware that conception has occurred. During the implantation process, the placenta begins to form. The placenta is a structure that allows oxygen and nutrients to pass into the fetus from the mother's bloodstream and bodily waste to pass out to the mother. This critical exchange takes place across thin membranes that block the passage of blood cells, keeping the fetal and maternal bloodstreams separate. Embryonic stage. The embryonic stage is the second stage of prenatal development, lasting from 2 weeks until the end of the 2nd month. During this stage, most of the vital organs and bodily systems begin to form in the developing organism, which is now called an embryo. Structures such as the heart, spine, and brain emerge gradually as cell division becomes more specialized. Although the embryo is typically only about an inch long at the end of the stage, it is already beginning to look human. Arms, legs, hands, feet, fingers, toes, eyes, and ears are already discernible. The embryonic stage is a period of great vulnerability because virtually all the basic physiological structures are being formed. If anything interferes with normal development during the embryonic phase, the effects can be devastating. Most miscarriages occur during this period. Most major structural birth defects are also due to problems that occur during the embryonic stage. Fetal stage. The fetal stage is the 3rd stage of prenatal development, lasting from 2 months through birth. The first 2 months of the fetal stage bring rapid bodily growth as muscles and bones begin to form. The developing organism, now called a fetus, becomes capable of physical movements as skeletal structures harden. Organs formed in the embryonic stage continue to grow and gradually begin to function. The sense of hearing, for example, is functional by around 20 to 24 weeks. During the final 3 months of the prenatal period, brain cells multiply at a brisk pace. A layer of fat is deposited under the skin to provide insulation, and the respiratory and digestive systems mature. All of this changes ready the fetus for life outside the cozy, supportive environment of its mother's womb. Sometime between 22 weeks and 26 weeks, the fetus reaches the age of viability, the age at which a baby can survive in the event of premature birth. Thanks to advances in medical technology, the age of viability has declined in recent decades in modern societies. Environmental factors and prenatal development. Although the fetus develops in the protective buffer of the womb, events in the external environment can affect it indirectly through the mother. Because the developing organism and its mother are linked through the placenta, a mother's eating habits, drug use, and physical health, among other things, can affect prenatal development and have long-term health consequences. Maternal nutrition. The developing fetus needs a variety of essential nutrients. Thus, it is not surprising that severe maternal malnutrition increases the risk of birth complications and neurological defects for the newborn. Maternal drug use. A major source of concern about fetal and infant well-being is the mother's consumption of drugs, including such widely used substances as tobacco and alcohol, as well as prescription and recreational drugs. Unfortunately, most drugs consumed by a pregnant woman can pass through the membrane of the placenta. Virtually all recreational drugs can be harmful, with sedatives, narcotics, and cocaine being particularly dangerous. Alcohol consumption during pregnancy also carries risks. It has long been clear that heavy drinking by a mother can be hazardous to a fetus. Fetal alcohol syndrome is a collection of congenital inborn problems associated with excessive alcohol use during pregnancy. Typical problems include microcephaly, a small head, heart defects, irritability, hyperactivity, and delayed mental and motor developments. Maternal illness. The fetus is largely defenseless against infections because its immune system matures relatively late in the prenatal period. The placenta screens out quite a number of infectious agents, but not all. Thus, many maternal illnesses can interfere with prenatal development. Diseases such as measles, rubella, that is German measles, syphilis, and chickenpox can be hazardous to the fetus, with the nature of any damage depending in part on when the mother contracts the illness. The HIV virus that causes AIDS can also be transmitted by pregnant women to their offspring. Basic principles of development. Growth and development are the result of both nature and nurture. They are influenced by a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and experiential factors. An individual child's progression through the developmental stages is a result of a unique mix of physical and mental predispositions and attributes, as well as environmental conditions such as poverty, prenatal drug exposure, or empathic parenting. A continual and cumulative process. Human development is best described as a continual and cumulative process. The one constant is change, and the changes that occur at each major phase of life can have important implications for the future. A holistic process. Humans are physical, cognitive, and social beings, and each of these components of self depends in part on changes taking place in other areas of development. Plasticity. Plasticity refers to the brain capacity for change in response to positive or negative life experiences. Although we have described development as a continual and cumulative process and noted that past events often have implications for the future, developmentalists know that the course of development can change abruptly if important aspects of one's life change. Historical or cultural context. No single portrait of development is accurate for all cultures, social classes, or racial and ethnic groups. Each culture, subculture, and social class transmits a particular pattern of beliefs, values, customs, and skills to its younger generations, and the content of this cultural socialization has a strong influence on the attributes and competencies that individuals display. Development is also influenced by societal changes, historical events, etc. The nature or nurture. Perhaps no theoretical controversy has been any more heated than this nature-nurture issue. Human development primarily can be the result of nature, that is biological forces, or nurture, that is environmental forces. The active, passive. The active or passive theme goes beyond considering the child's conscious choices and behaviors. That is, developmentalists consider a child active in development whenever any aspect of the child has an effect on the environment the child is experiencing. So, a temperamentally difficult infant who challenges the patience of his loving but frustrated parents is actively influencing his development, even though he is not consciously choosing to be temperamentally difficult. Similarly, a young preteen girl who has gone through the biological changes of puberty earlier than most of her classmates and friends did not choose this event. Nevertheless, the fact that she appears so much more mature than her peers is likely to have dramatic effects on the ways others treat her and the environment she experiences in general. Interconnected domains. Development occurs across a number of interconnected domains. Development in each domain is closely interwoven with development in the others, though it may not proceed evenly across domains in a parallel fashion. Example, language development may at times outstrip physical development or vice versa. Three major domains are physical, cognitive or linguistic, and socio-emotional. Development is progressive. Development is progressive over time. It unfolds in a series of stages in a consistent sequence. Though each individual develops in a unique way, the sequence of development is consistent for all individuals. For example, in general, children gain control over their bodies from head to toe and from the center out. An infant will be able to focus his or her eyes and follow an object before being able to lift his or her head. For each stage of development, there are milestones that tell whether or not the individual has achieved typical or normal development in the three domains. More broadly, there are developmental tasks that each individual needs to complete for each major developmental stage in each domain before he or she can proceed with optimum hope for success to the next stage. If tasks at a particular stage are not adequately completed, problems are likely to appear at future stages of development. Development does not always proceed evenly or at the same rate. Individuals' development does not always proceed evenly or at the same rate. Some degree of variation around what is considered the normal time for an individual to complete a developmental task should still be considered within the normal range. These normal variations would be smaller in the case of an infant in a period of rapid growth and development, but might be as much as 6 months for an adolescent. Development proceeds most rapidly in the earliest months and years of life, especially before age 5. Deficiencies in care at that stage can have especially serious effects on physical, cognitive, and social development. For example, rapid brain and body growth before age 2 makes infants highly susceptible to malnutrition, which, if not corrected, can lead to brain damage, mental retardation, and or growth retardation. Environmental and cultural context of development. The family. In power and breadth of influence, no context equals the family. The family creates bonds between people that are unique. Attachments to parents and siblings usually last a lifetime and serve as models for relationships in the wider world of neighborhood, school, and community. Within the family, children learn the language, skills, and social and moral values of their culture. And at all ages, people turn to family members for information, assistance, and interesting and pleasurable interaction. Warm and gratifying family ties predict physical and psychological health throughout development. In contrast, isolation or alienation from the family is often associated with developmental problems. Contemporary researchers view the family as a network interdependent of relationships. The ecological systems theory that has bidirectional influences exist in which the behavior of each family member affect those of others. Indeed, the very term system implies that the responses of all family members are related. This system influences and operates both directly and indirectly. Direct influences. When we observe family members interacting, it can be seen that kind and patient communication evokes cooperative, harmonious responses, whereas harshness and impatience engender angry and resistive behavior. Each of these reactions in turn forges a new link in interactive chain. In first instance, a positive message tends to follow. In the second, a negative or avoidant one tends to occur. For example, when parents' requests are accompanied by warmth and affection, children tend to cooperate. And when children willingly comply, their parents are likely to be warm and gentle in the future. In contrast, parents who discipline with harshness and impatience have children who refuse and rebel. And because children's misbehavior is stressful for parents, they may increase their use of punishment, leading to more unruliness by the child. Indirect influences. Bronfenbrenner calls the indirect influence of others as the effect of third parties. Third parties can serve as supports for development. For example, when parents' marital relationship is warm and considerate, mothers and fathers praise and stimulate their children more and scold them less. In contrast, when a marriage is tense and hostile, parents tend to be less responsive to their children's needs and to criticize, express anger, and punish. Similarly, children can affect their parents' relationship in powerful ways. For example, some children show lasting emotional problems when their parents' divorce happens. When family relationships are strained by third parties, other members like grandparents may help restore effective interaction. They can promote children's development in many ways, both directly by responding warmly to the child and indirectly by providing parents with child rearing advice, models of child rearing skill, and even financial assistance. Of course, like any indirect influence, grandparents can sometimes be harmful. When quarrelsome relations exist between grandparents and parents, parent-child communication may suffer. Adapting to change. According to Bronfenbrenner's theory, chronosystem, the interplay of forces within the family, is dynamic and ever-changing. Important events such as the birth of a baby, a change of jobs, or an elderly parent joining the household due to declining health create challenges that modify existing relationships. The way such events affect family interaction depends on the support provided by other family members as well as on the developmental status of each participant. In recent decades, a declining birth rate, a high divorce rate, and expansion of women's roles have led to a smaller family size. This, combined with a longer lifespan, means that more generations are alive with fewer members in the youngest ones, leading to a top-heavy family structure. Consequently, young people today are more likely to have older relatives than at any time in history, a circumstance that can be enriching as well as a source of tension. Socio-economic status and family functioning. Socio-economic status, or SES. It combines three interrelated but not completely overlapping variables. 1. Years of education, and 2. The prestige of and skill required by one's job, both of which measure social status, and 3. Income, which measures economic status. As socio-economic status rises and falls, people face changing circumstances that profoundly affect family functioning. SES affects the timing and duration of phases of the family life cycle. People who work in skilled and semi-skilled manual occupations, that is machinists, truck drivers, etc., tend to marry and have children earlier as well as give birth to more children than people in white-collar and professional occupations. The two groups also differ in values and expectations. For example, when asked about personal qualities they desire for their children, lower SES parents tend to emphasize external characteristics such as obedience, politeness, neatness, and cleanliness. In contrast, higher SES parents emphasize psychological traits such as curiosity, happiness, self-direction, and cognitive and social maturity. In addition, fathers in higher SES families tend to be more involved in child rearing and household responsibilities. Lower SES fathers, partly because of their gender stereotyped beliefs and partly because of economic necessity, focus more on their provider role. Education also contributes to SES differences in family interaction. Furthermore, the greater economic security of higher SES families permits them to devote more time, energy, and material resources to nurturing their children's psychological characteristics. The impact of poverty. When families slip into poverty, development is seriously threatened. Joblessness, a high divorce rate, a lower remarriage rate among women than men, widowhood, and inadequate government programs to meet family needs is responsible for developmental problems. The child poverty rate is higher than that of any age group. These circumstances are particularly worrisome because the earlier poverty begins, the deeper it and the longer it lasts, the more devastating its effects on physical and mental health and school achievement. The constant stresses that accompany poverty gradually weaken the family system. Poor families have many daily hassles: no food, improper clothing, no shelter, etc. When daily crises arise, family members become depressed, irritable, and distracted, and hostile interactions increase. These outcomes are especially severe in families that must live in poor housing and dangerous neighborhoods, conditions that make everyday existence more difficult while reducing social supports that help people cope with economic hardship. Most homeless families consist of women with children under age 5. Besides health problems which affect most homeless people, homeless children suffer from developmental delays and serious emotional stress. Cultural values and practices. Culture shape family interaction and community settings beyond the home, in short, all aspects of daily life. Many of us remain blind to aspects of our own cultural heritage until we see them in relation to the practices of others. Although many people value independence and privacy, not all citizens share the same values. Some are part of subcultures, groups of people with beliefs and customs that differ from those of the larger culture. Many minority groups have cooperative family structures which help protect their members from the harmful effects of poverty. Within the extended family, grandparents play meaningful roles in guiding younger generations. Adults with employment, marital or child rearing difficulties receive assistance and emotional support, and caregiving is enhanced for children and the elderly. Broad dimension on which cultures and subcultures differ are the extent to which collectivism versus individualism is emphasized. In collectivist societies, people define themselves as part of a group and stress group goals over individual goals. In individualistic societies, people think of themselves as separate entities and are largely concerned with their own personal needs. Although individualism tends to increase as cultures become more complex, cross-national differences remain. The United States is strongly individualistic and India is a collectivist. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far. The chapter provides a detailed picture of biological aspects of development. It discusses how a zygote gradually changes to a newborn. The prenatal period is described in detail with three phases like germinal stage, embryonic stage, and fetal stage. The different environmental factors which affect prenatal development are explained. The chapter highlights the important principles of development. It also discusses the environmental and cultural context of development, which includes the family, socioeconomic status, and the impact of poverty. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. Discuss in detail the process of prenatal development. Explain how environmental factors which influence prenatal development. What are the important principles of development? Development is influenced by environmental factors. Discuss. How cultural context influence development. Hope that you may go through the reference books for further reading. Developmental Psychology, Childhood and Adolescence, 8th edition by Schaffer Dr. and Kripp K. Senegage, Learning, Wadsworth, 2010. Developmental Psychology, A Lifespan Approach by E.B. Herlock, Tata McGraw-Hill Publishing Company Limited, New Delhi, India, 1997. Lifespan Development by J.S. Turner and D.B. Helms, Hort, Reinhardt and Vincent, Inkford, Watt, in the year 1987. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.